Hello and welcome to Kick Unhealthy Relationships to the Curb. I am your host, Stephanie McPhail. And today I am very excited to have Molly Sleuth on the show today to share her story. Welcome to the show, Molly.
Hi, so excited to be here. How's
Yeah, me
everybody?
too. So we had like a really cool, you have a kind of a crazy story. And I think, whenever we do these, it's always really about just inspiring people and reminding them what's possible for them. And, people are
Yeah.
in all sorts of different levels. And, sometimes the relationships aren't just romantic. Sometimes they're, real romantic. Sometimes they're professional. Sometimes they're friends and family and all that kind of stuff. But you've got kind of an interesting story of some pretty toxic relationships that you dealt with.
I feel like I've dated them all, the liars, the cheaters, the users, the gaslighters, the thieves, all of it, the
Were you
alcoholics.
collecting? Is that what you're collecting?
Yeah, it was sort of like Pokemon. I was trying to catch them all. I feel like I did. I won the game. Yay.
Oh,
But I learned so much from it, and I think the one that I wanted to share with you like changed my life in such a fantastic way. It was such a dark relationship, and so much grew out of it. So I feel like that's like with all my relationships, I feel like this is the one, because of this failure. I was able to pick myself up in a way that I never knew I could be, that I don't know, present in life and require that much. So um, I probably should have known there were a lot of red flags at the beginning, but we get lonely. I grew up in the city of Los Angeles, like a town of just soulless losers and vacuous, relationships. And this was one of them. And I should have known. I found him at a nightclub. He was the worst dancer I've ever seen in my entire life. And I just had to be a part of that self esteem. But it turns out that he was just a drunk and he had all this courage because he was a drunk. And there's so many twists and turns to it, but essentially he was accidentally sleeping with his roommate and swore that that was going to end and all that stuff. So he ended up like moving in with me temporarily. It was not, we weren't at that level where he was going to move in. And he swore he was going to get a place, and he just kind of like his downward spiral. I guess if there's anything I could say is like, don't wait for somebody else's bottom, because it was way lower than I could ever go and I would ever go again. But everything that was kind of wrong in his life, I felt, was due to drinking alcohol. He got fired from his job because he was late too many times, and he lost his apartment because he was sleeping with that girl, and he lost me because of drinking. But on this one particular night, he was on the subway in Los Angeles, and it can be a very scary place for crime. And so he was robbed by three people. He was drunk. I guess I should back up and say he wanted to be in the entertainment industry. I had no shortage of friends doing it. I sent him to this industry party and said, get to know these people and, tell them that you're going to do free work for them. But instead, he got totally trashed at this party. The woman who was throwing the party calls me and says, pick him up. And I was like, whoa, look, I'm not his mom. Why don't you throw him in a cab? I'll pay for it when it gets here, but this is LA and I'm not losing my parking spot over this.
yes,
I'm not the
yes.
one that got drunk and broke the coffee table and drank your great uncle's uh, bottle of whiskey that was like hundreds of years old or something. And so the cab never comes. I call her back. Hi, did you put him in a cab? Oh, no, he said F you and he just walked off. Okay, well, that's fantastic. So I do leave my parking spot. I look all over downtown trying to find him. Nope, nope, nope. Come home, sit down. The moment I sit down, the sheriff's department calls me and says, come claim him. Like, what does that even mean? And is he okay? Is he alive? We can't tell you. I go down to the emergency room. Um, his name was kind of messed up. So they couldn't find him. They said, just come through the emergency room and see if you can find him. It didn't even look like him. Anyway, he got his skull crushed in. He lost his eye sockets, his sinus cavity, his jaw, all of his teeth. And when he was drunk in the hospital was the only time that he was honest with me. He said, they went to rob me. And I said, you're going to have to kill me for it. So they basically, your wish is my command, over $40. He lost basically all the bones in his face and parts of all of his teeth. And they stomped on him and broke his collarbone. And it was a big mess. And so from that, he didn't want to get up. He didn't want to work anymore. He didn't want to get a new job. He didn't want to do anything. He wanted to play video games like he's my child. And he wanted, he lost his driver's license. Actually, I found out because we went to go get everything back into his wallet that he had lost his driver's license years ago in a driving under the influence arrest, which I didn't know about. And so he had to go to AA. He didn't have a ride. So I'm driving him and sitting in the car like his mom waiting for him to finish soccer practice. And it was just like too much. And so his brother was in a big band. They threw this big benefit. It was thousands of dollars. I had been paying for the maxillofacial specialist and all the medication and everything, taking him everywhere. I had lost a job I had just got. It was going to be a great job, whatever. And because I was acting like his mom.
Mm-hmm.
And his own family didn't even come to my house to help in any way. And so through that, they got all this money to pay for his medical bills, and he used the money to open a nightclub.
Oh.
So it was just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And so at any rate, like it was just, I kept waiting for like him to reach his bottom, to want to pick himself up by his bootstraps. Stephanie, it did not happen. So by the time I moved him out, I paid for a dowry. Here's blankets, pillows, towels, everything that you need. You need to just leave. And he moved out. And it was this cathartic day for me where I was like, oh my God, thank God he's gone. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, how do I start over? How do I pick myself up? What do I do? What's the first thing to do? And I said, you know what? I'm going to eat lunch. And so I open my cupboard and I get out this stupid can of chili and I'm going to just have lunch. It's just one thing. Let's just start there. I open my drawer and I just crumpled on my kitchen floor because I gave him my only can opener so he could start his life. And I'm sitting there crying on the floor with this stupid can of chili. And it was such a low point for me. But it also opened up such an avenue that changed my life forever because I started volunteering with the Los Angeles Police Department. And I loved it. I loved every minute. I loved helping people. I was sworn in 2008. Actually, today is 16 years since I stood on that black line and they screamed at me and told me, get on your hands and do push-ups and all that stuff. And so I did that job for over a decade. And I was a detective working major assault crimes. So I've helped hundreds of people with toxic breakups and going through the restraining order process and felony arrests and preparing them to testify in court and life-changing injuries and so much worse. So although I have a lot of bad experiences dating myself, I feel like I've learned so much in helping other people that didn't have their bottom with these guys or girls either, because we can be pretty bad. And I would say if there's one thing to tell somebody that's in one of these terrible relationships, and I don't just mean like, oh, he never buys me flowers anymore. Like, I don't want to honor my commitment because now he's old and he has a big belly. I mean, when you're truly in a toxic relationship that you need to get out of, you don't need hard evidence that he's cheating on you. You do not need the approval of your mom or your friends to get out of this relationship. You don't need it to be mutual. He doesn't need to want to get out of the relationship too.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to save up more money. You don't need to have another boyfriend on standby to be your safe lily pad to hop to. It's okay to just get out, even with nothing, even with no can opener. Because I'll tell you that when I went to LAPD, it was the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life. And I never would have gone down an avenue like that had I not been in such a dark place with nothing and a stupid can of chili in my hand. And so I help people now like you do, but like you are so like nurturing and affirming and so amazing. And I think I'm a little bit more like a Navy SEAL. Like I just like dive in there and like what needs to happen right now. This is what you need to do. So I think we have different.
I don't know. I'm a little New York. So every once in a while, there's people that are like, do you have to be so direct? And I'm like, I'm not good at fluffy. Like my husband is very good at fluffy. I'm like nurturing or whatever, but I'm going to call you out on your bullshit because that's what needs to happen. We don't need to be told what we're doing is right if it's the same stuff over and over again. Like we're making the same mistake. Let's stop doing those things.
Right. I would say our biggest problem, we're kind of in this odd era right now with like murky gender roles and stuff. And we have this feminism. We're like, we're so strong and we could do everything ourselves. We have used things that could be good and it has cheapened us, and we've lost a lot of our self-esteem. And that is so detrimental, not just to women, but to men too, because when we don't value ourselves and when we're free roadkill, a guy might like pick us up in a pinch, but he's not going to brag to his friends about us. And he's not going to put that trophy head on his wall and tell everybody that story of the time. And our grandparents were amazing because they grew up in such a different time. And you hear these stories of like, oh, I really wanted to ask her out, but she didn't like me very much. She said she wanted to date somebody with a 1950 baby blue Chevy Bel Air. And so I worked at 3 gas stations and she still wouldn't go out with me. And I bought the car and she still wouldn't go out with me. And I paid my little brother to tutor her little brother in math and she still wouldn't go out with me. And I asked her father, and that earning is something that is so lost now in this Tinder generation. And like, because I was a cop and well, whatever, I have so many male friends. So I've seen the screenshots and I see that these girls are like, here are all my kibbles and bits, and I will do anything you want before you even sit down and like eat a meal with me. And you can just come live with me. And like, we have just become roadkill, just waiting there at the side of the road, like I'll do anything and I'll be anybody that you want me to be. And
well, that's the worthiness. Although I will say that back when our grandparents were around, if he cheated, then you said nothing because you had no credit card, ability. You couldn't get a bank account and you weren't allowed to really get a divorce because everybody would not talk to you because you were a whore. So there's definitely pros and cons. Like I'm pretty sure, like my grandfather cheated on my grandmother for most of their marriage and she never even thought twice about leaving because he was the one who took care of her and she, whatever. So there's definitely, but I agree with you. I actually just did a post the other day. I think it was actually yesterday. And I said, is there a difficult place for men and women with changed gender roles? Because I feel like men kind of don't know where their place is and how to show up, because women are working. Women don't need men the way that we did before. We're both working, we're doing everything. So like taking care of the kids, house stuff, like all those partnership roles, some men are stepping up and saying, I'm helpful, but then who am I as the provider and the man that I've been supposed to be? And then some of the women are not getting that from their men and they're not happy about it. So I think it's really an interesting time to learn a lot about and create something different because it wasn't, there's changes that need to be made for all of us, I think.
Yeah, it's so true. And I know so many great guys that are single from my time in LAPD and even, just around town. And they are scared to open a door because I don't need no man. And they're scared to tell women, you look pretty today. Or I like your smile, or would you like to go out? Or, are you single? It's like we have neutered them with all this like overt, we can take care of ourselves, we don't need you. And I feel like we kind of need to be strong but soft and let them. I mean, listen, I was undercover for a year. I worked hardcore gangs. Like I've done some stuff and I have to feminize myself a little bit to be more marketable to get what I want. Can I open the door myself? Yeah, I think we all can. But that's kind of not the point. And I'm not saying to fake that your man is a man. If he can't cut the mustard, like maybe go find somebody that's more compatible to where you want to be, gender role wise. My dad is 90. He still takes the trash out and my mom still cooks and cleans. So, but I think we went too far with it. And now we're at this point where and I saw it so much in Los Angeles, there's always somebody that will do the job for half the money and half the clothes. So you can't win that competition. You can put, pictures of your butt in the bathroom mirror on Tinder all day long, but you're never going to be that trophy that man is talking about 50 years later.
Well, there's putting yourself on top shelf. And that's actually one of the things that I had to learn, is that because I am a strong, independent woman, I never needed anyone to take care of me. I was raised to take care of myself. I don't need anyone. But the problem with that is that I was attracting people that needed me. They wanted to take from me. So like and what I teach my clients, the same thing that I had to learn was, like, in dating, you're the guy, you're paying. Like, you're taking me out. This is a date. You're planning it. You're taking me out. I'm allowing you to, maybe not the first date, depending on where we met, but I'm allowing you to pick me up. I'm allowing you to open the doors, like all those kinds of things. When I was younger, I was like, we need to split the bill. We need to, I need to drive there and show up. And, I had a guy tell me at one point, he said, it's the fact that you have to let them do that for you. You have to let them help you. You have to let them take care of you, because it shows that they're interested and they want to give back. If you're just giving all the time, then they don't need to give. But then guess what? I could just play this and get all the things that I want and have to do nothing in the relationship. It always tends to be toxic when we do that.
Yeah, it's their brains are very different than us. They're wired for that dopamine that they have earned, and it's like throwing a ball for a dog, kind of like they want that chase. And if we are free roadkill for the taking, you're taking away your value. I always kind of equate it to a garage sale. Like, you're having this garage sale, and sort of a metaphor for dating, and a guy comes and says, oh, that's a cool lamp. How much for the lamp? And you're like, I really want to get $20, but $5. And the guy is going to say, cool, I'll pay $5. Or, there's cheaper lamps down the street and this one has a nick in it. Or like, no, thanks, I don't want the lamp. But he's never going to say, clearly this lamp is worth $20. You must take $20. If your lamp is worth $20, just say $20. And if he doesn't have it, or if he doesn't value it enough, or he's got to pick apart every little scratch on it, or tell you how free the ones are down the street, he's not the guy.
Exactly.
We set our own price in so many ways. What are you going to tolerate? And it really starts at the beginning of the relationship, just like you're saying. Is he going to pick me up? Is he the kind of guy who's like, yeah, I couldn't find parking, I'm 3 blocks away, come find me? Or is he the kind of guy who's like, I'm right out front, I'm double parked, I left the car, I want to knock on the door, I want to, meet your dog, and then let's go. Or, oh, I forgot my wallet. Or he gets obliterated drunk on the first day. Like, people do tend to hide a lot of their flaws at the beginning of the relationship, but I think that's where the self-esteem comes into play, because with self-esteem, you don't have that loneliness, that desperation, that like, oh, I hope this guy's the one, and making up all kinds of fantasies in your head about how much better he is than.
Well, and if they're so good in the beginning and you're seeing things, you're like, oh, I don't know. Why do we keep going out with them? And that's what it is. It's that self-esteem part. Like, we're like, oh, I don't know, but maybe there's possibility and there's some good things. And, I see potential, and, we don't date potential anymore, ladies.
No. I remember I was in the car. This was like right when cell phones started. And I was in the car with this boyfriend that I had just started dating. And he picks up the phone. He says, hello. Yeah, I'm at lunch. My grandma. Okay, bye. Did you just tell somebody you're at lunch with your grandma? What are you talking about? The conversation was like 2 seconds ago. Like, you said, at lunch, pause, my grandma. What do you mean? Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, why would I go out with that guy ever again? Whoever he was on the phone with, whether it was his employer or some prospective girl or anyone, like, he literally just told somebody he was at lunch with his grandma instead of admitting that he was out to lunch with me. That's a deep story that goes much further than that. But that was one of those relationships where I felt like I needed like harder evidence that he was a loser. So like I kept going like further down this rabbit hole to just see like what a depraved piece of garbage this guy was. And like there was no end to it. There still is no end to it. So I was really glad for evidence, and also being a little bit of a sleuth, if you call it that way. Because I was a detective long before I was a detective. Because I grew up in the city of Los Angeles, where, and like you're saying with New York, like you have to be a little bit street smart because there are people that want to do terrible things to you. So you have to be a little bit tough and a little bit, sly and skeptical. And no difference with him. I don't think we need to go down the rabbit hole with people. There are, and I guess like for the people that are dating online, be so picky from the beginning, because, and about the real stuff. I don't mean like, oh, I don't like a guy who wears plaid. Forget it, swipe left. But about the fundamental things. If you already know that the guy plans on retiring in another country and you and your family are here, that's an impasse. There's no purpose seeing the sign that says dead end ahead and being like, oh, let's see how far this goes. Like, just get out.
Yeah.
And with having that self-esteem, then you're saving yourself from all these years of wasted time. I used to tell all my victims, like, you can't reach for the gold if your fist is clenched around dirt. You have to let it go and stop thinking that we need a boyfriend constantly to validate ourselves or tell us that we're pretty or funny or whatever. You don't need to have that safety of that lily pad. And honestly, if you can be confident, you will find somebody so much of a higher caliber than if you're like desperate. And I mean, you could move in with me if you want, and
Yeah.
here's a picture of my kibbles and bits, do you like
Mhm.
it? It's not working for us.
Well, and there's something to be said about confidence in that sense. It's like it's being able to say, I don't want this and it's okay because I don't need you in order to
Right.
be okay. I mean, and like you were saying before about, needing proof of things. I literally just talked to someone about this yesterday where they were like, well, they weren't beating me. It would have been better if they were, because then I would have left, but it was just emotional stuff. And
Yeah.
I said, I'm like, any of the physical things I ever dealt with, I mean, not that that was great, but it was the mental part that took a while for me to clear out. It wasn't, I mean, that stuff was terrible, but it was the incessant nastiness, the under the table, like remarks that were made and constantly putting me down, all that stuff. That's really what I needed the help from. So because we lack that confidence, we want someone else to be like, this isn't good, you should get out. Or you're right, this isn't a healthy relationship. But we're not going to get that from most people. Most people are
Yeah.
afraid to say anything because they don't want to get involved in somebody else's relationship, or their relationship is also terrible and they don't have anything to say.
Yeah. Yeah. And also we're just living in an odd time where people are very much full of their own stuff,
Yep.
and people aren't rooting for you in the way that sometimes you need them to root for you.
That's
Or
true.
they're being too accepting of things that they shouldn't be if they were really, really had your back. So yeah, it's tricky, but there really are good people out there of all generations, and don't waste any time on people that don't get it yet. There are good guys out there, despite all the free roadkill, and we need to stand together as women, men, just society. We need to improve ourselves, because you have to make that guy earn you to have this, but also in the breakup and stuff, to be the crazy girl that keys the car and throws the stuff over the balcony. Like, that's not helping us either,
Mhm.
because then they just have this expectation that women are this certain way. If we could elevate ourselves, they want to be with us. Men used to give their whole life in a paycheck and I will take care of you forever, just so that they can, be with us. There's
Mhm.
a funny book called Will Marry for Food, Sex, and Laundry. Like, the exchange used to be pretty basic.
Yeah.
And now we provide a lot more in a relationship when it comes to, a paycheck, or being, not being that like, oh, I dropped my hanky, but like,
Yeah.
but I think men do want to pick up that hanky. And I mean, maybe there's a little bit of faking it involved, but like, there's a I don't know, I want to say like not real men out there, but it's lowest common denominator. If you ask $5 for the lamp, don't expect 20. And that's where we've gotten to. And it's not the men's fault. You asked for 5. He was willing to give you 5. And then we get all bitter, like, oh, I can't even believe that. He's living with me for free. He won't stop playing video games. Like, he keeps going out with his friends. He's still talking to that ex. And like all that stuff that we get pissy about, like, well, you didn't set the line in the sand from the very beginning.
Well, we enable it. I mean, that was my first husband. I literally suggested that he quit his job. Like, he hated it. He complained about it all the time. I was like, if you go back to school and you can pay a certain percentage of the money for the bills, I will take care of you. You know, I was like, I was always the one who made more money anyway. And I was like, I can do it. I know I can do it. Just give me, and it was like $500. It wasn't even a lot. I'll take care of everything. He couldn't even do that. And then instead of me being like, all right, well, you need to find someone else, like go live with your mom if you can't even take care of basic bills. I was like, oh, well, okay, well, let me be so understanding. And then he was abused. Like, there was all these different things that should have been run. But again, maybe he'll change. Maybe, things were better in the beginning. Maybe he'll get the love that I have. And I mean, I was literally selling myself on the clearance rack, expecting this great guy to come around. And that was never going to happen with him because he wasn't a great guy. He didn't have his stuff together. He was not going to be the person that I wanted him to be. But luckily, I came to reality and said, I'm not going to do this anymore. And then I brought myself up to a place where I wasn't accepting of breadcrumbs anymore.
Yeah. And I think that's twofold in a way, because when we lower ourselves, then they look at their mate like, I got clearance rack, and they start to get bitter, which starts bad behavior. And also when we have that mother-son dynamic where they can't get their shit together and we're like, oh, I'll help you.
Yeah.
They also get bitter because they know that like we could do better and they're not doing so well, and they don't feel like that man, and they really want to feel like, I am the hero. Here is your hanky, madame. And we need to hold them accountable for bad behavior and also let them be that hero. I mean, I could say, as they've done studies, and men overwhelmingly, what would you like your mate to be for a living? I want a kindergarten teacher, because they're soft and nurturing and loving, and they make these men feel like big, strong heroes. And like, here I am, like a gang cop that's like going and testifying as an expert in murder trials. Like, it was like, yeah, I don't know how I'm going to get one of those. But sometimes we do have to fake how independent we are and just dumb it down a little bit. And
or sometimes it's just the wrong person,
Well, it really depends. Like, because I guess I generally find like puppy dogs who want to ride the tail of the comet because you're so fascinating and like take me with you, which isn't that fun. Or I find like the a-holes that are like, I will break her, I will take that power, and they want to like consume me and like harness this. And so it's really, there's a lot of trying to figure out if we're even from the beginning, and both of those, the puppy dogs and the a-holes, like they just don't work for me. So
I can keep going. We're over time. Okay. I just reminded, we're going to have you on the show again. I really appreciate you sharing the story. It's a really great conversation that we definitely need to keep going with. But is there any like last thing you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah. So self-esteem is really about just starting small goals, small wins, and not looking at like, oh, if only I'm 110 pounds, then life will be mine. Like, start small. I made my bed today. And self-esteem is for everything. It's for your relationships. It's for work promotions. Self-esteem is really the key.
Love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us today. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. As always, we will see you next Tuesday. And never forget, you are way stronger than you realize. Bye, everybody.